The system made a mistake in the target of the strategy, but he was a stubborn person and insisted that I make the best of it. No, buddy, you want me, a man, to seduce the male protagonist? The system was as calm as death. It's just work. Everyone makes mistakes. Just go through the process, he won't really sleep with you. I wore a shirt that was so thin that it was transparent, put on a breast chain, and climbed into the male protagonist's bed. The moment he saw me, his violent expression suddenly changed to joy, and he pounced on me like a dog seeing a bone. System, you damned bastard. 1. My system is a scam. When it teleported me into the novel a year in advance, the heroine was still in her senior year of high school thousands of miles away. The male protagonist Robert is the standard school bully in campus novels, and fighting and skipping classes are commonplace. The system, which has no parents to love it, insisted that I play SpongeBob SquarePants for it. Once I did, Robert dragged me and my phone into the alley on my way home from evening study. Without thinking, I threw a punch at him, but Robert quickly blocked my move with his arm. To my surprise, I saw him open my phone. The light from the cell phone illuminated his face. He had his eyes downcast with a dull expression. I clearly saw him press the 3 digits 911 on the dialing interface. After doing this, he finally felt like treating me, an innocent passerby, with contempt. Saving a life is better than building a 7-story pagoda. I'm calling the police. There was no expression on his face, and after the call was connected, his voice was steady and calm, like that of a kind passerby. You guys are fighting, so you call the police? I find it hard to understand how these two words are connected. Robert looked puzzled, as if asking me why I asked such a stupid question. If I can't beat him but don't call the police, am I just waiting to be beaten? That's not sick. He stuffed the phone into my arms and took out a few red banknotes from the right pocket of his school uniform pants and handed them to me. I took a quick glance and saw at least 5. Seeing that I didn't answer, Robert, who had already turned sideways and was ready to join the fight at any time, turned his head and looked me up and down, his narrow eyes slightly narrowed. Not enough. He started to search the left pocket of his school uniform pants. This time it took him a little longer. He took out a few bills and threw them to me. Then he flipped over the pile of cardboard boxes with clean and neat movements. As he joined in, the sounds of fighting became more intense from the other end. I was stunned for half a second, picked it up and counted the money. 900, and inside there was a snow-white math test paper that looked like it had been crumpled many times. No wonder everyone is willing to be a dog for the male protagonist. That's more than I make at work. 2. It's really not easy to be the protagonist's dog. I just stayed there for a while and the police handcuffed me. It was pitch dark when I came out after finishing the statement. I left first and heard someone cursing behind me. Don't let me catch who called the police, damn it. You are a beast without martial ethics. Worse than pigs and dogs. I subconsciously turned around and looked at Robert. Because it was too dark, I could only see a few human figures behind me with the help of streetlights not far away. The footsteps behind me suddenly stopped. Why haven't I seen you before? You were the one who got so angry that you called the police? From the voice, it was the guy who was swearing just now. I noticed that Robert's eyes seemed to be fixed on me, which reminded me of an emoticon I once saw. I will keep watching you. Always. This is truly the most uncool campus novel male protagonist I have ever seen, although this is the only one I have ever seen. I didn't say anything. The man was obviously impatient and walked towards me with heavy steps. Dazzled by the light from the street lamp, his face took on a somewhat ferocious look, particularly pure and innocent. Robert took 2 steps forward, past him, and said casually, I also want to know which bastard called the police and ruined our business. Today, the battle between you and me should have ended in a tie. But it shouldn't be. I just happened to walk under the street light. The light was bright, and I couldn't help but look at Robert. As expected of the male lead, he remained calm even when being scolded. The moment I turned my head, Robert's eyes jumped, and he stared at me as if he was dumb, with his Adam's apple rolling. Whispered, I don't think he looks like that kind of person. The man looked at me for a moment and stopped. It's not like that. Before he finished speaking, the distance between Robert and me had been shortened to less than 1 meter. This time, I saw Robert's expression clearly. I always feel like something is odd, especially the look in Robert's eyes. It seems wrong no matter how I look at it. The look in his eyes looked hungry, but the system says, "No problem, just don't scream at me. There will be a time for you to scream in the future." I really hate myself for not asking more questions. By the time I understood this sentence, it was too late. 3. Robert walked up to me in 2 steps and said casually, "You are also a student of our number 1 middle school, right? Why haven't I seen you before?" As he spoke, his eyes were always on my face, looking at the mole at the corner of my eye. The look in his eyes made me feel a little uncomfortable, but I couldn't see anything when I looked closely. I subconsciously raised my hand and rubbed the corner of my eye. "What? The student registration is in your head? I should have been home a long time ago. It was you who got into a fight in the middle of the night and stole someone's phone, which got me into trouble. Now you're still here checking the household registration. You're crazy." Robert's eyes were gloomy, and I didn't know if he had taken my words in. His expression didn't change at all. His eyes moved down until they landed on my lips. I frowned. "What are you doing? It's really weird, and I feel uneasy." I asked the system, "Is your male protagonist a bit mentally ill?" The system said with certainty, "His data is normal, but his color is weird." "Is this something you can tell me?" Robert looked away, as if he hadn't heard the dissatisfaction in my tone, and continued asking, "So you're new here? If you were in number 1 middle school before, I would have remembered it." I heard the urgency in his tone and looked at him in confusion. The system rarely speaks up. "He thinks you are too attractive and feels dangerous. But the heroine hasn't shown up yet, and he's already worried that I'll seduce him? That's too much of a precaution." The system ignored me, but Robert kept asking me, "When did you transfer here?" "I can't do that just for the sake of the $900. I don't have much patience to begin with." "Are you annoying? Will you pay me if I answer questions?" Robert's eyes lit up, as if he had found a breakthrough, and nodded repeatedly. "Yes, 1,000 questions." I simply couldn't keep a cold face. I wanted to laugh when I heard about giving money. "Okay, master, feel free to ask anything you want to ask. I will tell you everything I know. I'm from number 1 middle school. I just transferred here last month." Robert nodded and said affirmatively, 2,000. "What's your name? Which class are you from? What do you like to eat? Is there anything you avoid? Is there anything you are interested in? What kind of people do you like?" So many questions. My heart moved, and then said, "Look how tired we are standing. Let's find a place to sit and talk. Ask a few more questions and you'll earn your college tuition." When the system transferred me in, I was assigned the identity of an orphan without a father or a mother. Although the reality is also, but I really don't understand. While I was studying for the college entrance examination, I also had to work part-time to make money. Then when I got to college, I had to distract myself to seduce the heroine. What kind of organ did the author use to come up with this plot? But it doesn't matter. The most important thing now is that Robert, the sucker, agreed without hesitation. "Why don't you go to my house? I'll go home and get you the money." He emphasized the word "take the money," curved his lips, and looked in a good mood. I feel like something is wrong, but I just forget it. Anyway, I'm a grown man and he can't do anything to me, so I just go. "Okay, let's go now." Robert seemed to be in a better mood. "Come in, I'll get you the money." That's what Robert said when he let me in. Without him saying anything, I quickly changed my shoes and followed him. "Come with me into the room and I'll get you the money. It's not good for you to stand outside and wait." This male protagonist is quite polite. I followed him in without any hesitation, and Robert pointed to the big bed in the room. "You sit there, there is no chair in my room. I'll get you the money." He said this, his tone unconsciously bringing out a hint of pleasure. Weird. Such a big villa with such luxurious decoration, but there is not even a chair in the room. System. This is the nth time you've said something is weird today. What's weird? I thought, like a pervert. Are you talking about me? I was startled and didn't know when I said it out loud. Robert was leaning against the door, holding a belt in his hand, looking at me with a half-smile. His slender white fingers stroked the belt in his hand, with a faint smile on his lips. What did I do wrong that made you uncomfortable? Or do you have some misunderstanding about me? I thought about it in my mind and realized that if a boss asked me this kind of question, he would probably be telling me to go die. You heard wrong. Robert raised his eyebrows, neither believing nor disbelieving. Okay, now answer my question. He strode over and sat down next to me. What's your name? When I think of 1,000 questions, I answer without hesitation. David. He asked me questions and I answered them. The more I answered, the more I felt that the male protagonist was abnormal. It was understandable that he was curious about what kind of person I liked. After all, I was his future rival in love. The system also said that he had a sense of crisis. But why should you be curious about the color of your rival's socks? System. Tell me the truth. Is the male protagonist mentally ill? I don't understand. System. If he wants to know, just tell him. He's not asking you what color your underwear is. Besides, if he were normal, how could he give you 1,000 for each question? I think so too. Making money is important. In order to demonstrate my pragmatic work attitude, I decisively lifted up my trouser legs to show him. Here, white. Robert's face looked a little unhappy. He frowned and said, You can't just show it to others like that. This is mentally retarded. Asking but not looking. Thinking about the money, I endured it and said, perfunctorily. Robert stared at my socks for a while, and suddenly said in a muffled voice, It's a bit tight. Let me help you. I glanced down and it seemed like there was a little bit. I followed up on his question. How can you help me? Robert raised his hand and placed his warm fingertips on my calf. I subconsciously wanted to pull back. The fingers that were originally just pressing against my calf suddenly tightened, leaving a deep indentation. Don't move. The sound is a bit dry. Robert held my legs, hooked the edge of my socks, and gently pulled them out. The socks, which were already a little tight, were pulled together, revealing a bit of snow-white flesh. His movements were very gentle, but I don't know if it was because his hands were too hot, but I felt a little itchy. Just as he was about to struggle, Robert withdrew his hand and tapped his fingers tightly. The blue veins on the back of the hand are particularly obvious because of the force. I heard him breathe harder for a moment, and heard him say, Your legs are so white and your flesh is so soft. It seems like I can squeeze out water, and it feels like it will turn red if I use a little more force. If water can be squeezed out, it must be blood. Thank you, you two. I looked at him with a forced smile. Robert was still staring at my trouser legs, which I had already put down, and muttered, My cock is hard, do you mind? He is even more incomprehensible than the company boss I met at work. I couldn't guess what Robert meant, so I replied sincerely, It's better if the meat is harder, because it means it's firm and strong. Before Robert could speak, the system in his mind spoke first. Host, sometimes it is better to be mute. Robert nodded thoughtfully. He looked a little hot and quickly rolled up his sleeves. From the exposed muscle lines, it seemed that he was indeed exercising. I've heard that you're good at fighting, so how come you can't beat others? And why did you try to borrow my phone? You were showing off your hard cock, showing off that you are better than me, right? I can be sarcastic. Robert was silent for a moment and then explained, That depends on how many people are on the other side. If you can't win, then don't fight. He arranged a fight with a bunch of people, so I took 2 friends with me. Halfway through the fight, 3 foreign players showed up, so I had to call the police. But I couldn't use my own phone, so passers-by were the best. He finished speaking, paused and continued, Luckily you came. They may still give you trouble during this period, so try to stay with me to avoid being bullied. Robert's tone was firm, and my attention was instantly drawn away. The male owner is quite nice. The system suddenly spoke. He has something better. I was confused by its incoherent words and asked, What? The The system actually laughed twice in an emotionless mechanical voice and didn't answer me. 5. The system refused to respond to me after it finished speaking in a riddle. When I looked up, I saw Robert looking at me deeply. I don't know how long he stared at me like this. I signaled him to speak with my eyes. Robert suddenly approached. "Your waist looks so thin. Let me measure it, okay?" He stroked his fingers, eager to try, with an astonishing desire in his eyes. I glanced at Robert's waist, which looked extremely powerful. Is he showing off to me again that he works out every day? "Measure, quickly." My tone was bad. Robert just looked at me but didn't move, and for some reason he looked a little pitiful. "Come on." I softened my tone and couldn't help urging him. He straightened his belt and bent down to buckle it around my waist. He looped it around my waist and tightened it. "It's only here. You're so skinny." He pointed to the belt buckle hole and I cooperated with him to look at it. Unexpectedly, Robert suddenly used force and I almost fell into his arms. What I didn't expect was that the male owner was E and Bogung was E. It was quite big and chewy, and it hit me in the face. As expected of someone who often works out and fights, my thoughts were in a flood for a moment, and my expression looked a little strange. Robert smiled and spoke softly. "I really want to." The last word was unclear and he swallowed 2 words. "What?" Robert looked innocent. "Sorry, my hand just slipped. I'll untie it for you." He unbuckled my belt and said, "I'll transfer the money I paid for the question to you." I didn't care that he was solving the problem slowly, which made me uncomfortable, and I immediately brought up the QR code payment interface. Robert glanced at it and said casually, "Let's add each other as friends." After adding each other as friends, he transferred all the money to me. The way I looked at him was no different from the way I looked at the god of wealth. At least I don't have to worry about tuition for 2 years of college. Robert turned his head and said coldly, "Don't look at me like that." He tried to hold back, but it seemed like he couldn't help it. Finally, he turned his head, folded the belt in his hand twice, and touched my face with restraint. The lust in his eyes was hard to discern. "Save it for later." Hit me in the face later? He wanted to hit me after just 2 glances. I couldn't stand it, so I quickly called the system. "System, he hit me in the face with a belt. Doesn't the male supporting role have dignity? I have to pay more." The system's mechanical voice was cold. "You will know later, and it will feel great." "Oh?" "Detongzi, is this Chinese you were talking about?" 6. After leaving Robert, I saw him every day. The system says this is the law of main and supporting characters. That is, the main characters and supporting characters constantly intersect, triggering the plot. Even though the content of the novel has not yet begun, I have already met the male protagonist, so I will continue to have interactions with him. I understand that this means more opportunities to make money. I was so nice to my boss, especially one who paid me a lot and did little work, that even I was shocked. Robert and I have a very good relationship. I have to say, the male protagonist is worthy of being the male protagonist. Not only did he buy me food every day, he also took me home so that I no longer had to walk 5 kilometers to go to class. I am very tired every day and fall asleep as soon as I take a shower. Until that night when I suddenly woke up, Robert still had his eyes open, staring at me without blinking. He kept muttering, "Why do you trust me so much? Am I a good person?" He kept his eyes open and asked questions repeatedly in the darkness. I patted him on the back. His body stiffened instantly, as if someone had discovered his secret. He didn't move at all, even holding his breath. "You are. Go to sleep." As I finished speaking, I felt a sudden surge of warmth around me. "I want to hold you." I was so sleepy that when I heard the word hug, I reached for the hand of the person next to me in a daze. As soon as I touched his body, Robert quickly wrapped around me as if he had 8 hands, and couldn't wait to wrap me up with his body. "Baby." Robert lowered his head and rubbed my face. I felt extremely sleepy and left the thinking to the system. What does he mean? The system doesn't care. Kiss him and you'll know. I didn't want to ask. Judging from the system's tone, it shouldn't be a big deal, so I continued to sleep. When I woke up the next day, I found Robert and I entangled in an extremely disgusting posture. My left leg was on him, and my right leg was pressed under him. His hands were even on my waist, ready to hug me at any time. I reached out and pushed him away, and Robert woke up as soon as I moved. Awake so early? He glanced at the time, confused. Usually you have to sleep until 7:30. When he said this, my right leg was still under him. You're pressing on my legs. How come you're sleeping like this? Robert dropped his eyes. I'll pay more attention next time. Oh! I got up and prepared to change clothes, and the system, which had been silent for many days, suddenly spoke. Host, do you feel something is wrong? What's wrong? I took off my pajamas and started putting on my clothes quickly. Robert sat on the bed, his eyes fixed on me as if they were real. Seeing that I stopped, he stood up and walked towards me, reaching out to pull my clothes down very naturally. Sit down and I'll put it on for you. When I came to my senses, I was already being forced onto the bed by Robert. He grabbed my calves and skillfully put my socks and shoes on me. After packing up, Robert and I went to class together. In the car, Robert leaned on me to catch up on his sleep, but he could never fall asleep, so he held my hand and fiddled with it from time to time. It was always like this, but today Robert was different. He seemed to be hesitant to speak. What do you want to say? Robert looked at me awkwardly and said after a while, if I get into trouble, you'll help me, right? I silently apologized in my heart. Although Robert is my good brother, I still want to seduce the heroine. Of course. Robert curled the corners of his lips and smiled sincerely. Actually, I've never been able to sleep well, but yesterday I found that I could sleep well holding you. Can you try with me again? The protagonists all have some strange diseases. I looked hesitant and Robert's eyes dimmed. I thought too much, thinking that with our relationship, I could get your help. Now that things have come to this, I had no choice but to nod. Robert immediately raised his head, raised his chin slightly, and pointed to the position on his thigh. He explained, it's more comfortable to hold like this. Hurry up, we'll be at school soon. During this period of time, Robert would follow me to class. Anyway, he will work hard for various reasons in the future so that he can meet the heroine in college, so I will just lay the foundation for him now. In order not to miss the class, I gritted my teeth and moved to my good brother's legs. Robert leaned over and hugged me. The road, which had always been smooth, suddenly bumped twice, and I instinctively hugged Robert. He suddenly smiled with a look of success in his eyes. Before I could take a closer look, Robert leaned his head on my shoulder, his hot breath hitting my ear, and I froze for a moment. I feel uncomfortable like this. Why don't I get down? I supported my hands on his thighs and tried to move down. Robert suddenly shook his legs, and due to inertia, I fell back into his arms. I told you I feel uncomfortable like this. I spoke again. The summer clothes were thin, and I could feel the scorching heat from his body. Robert didn't say anything, just hugged my waist tightly and pushed me into his arms. My struggling movements suddenly stopped and a tingling sensation began to surge from my spine. Robert bit my ear. He bit it lightly and then pulled away, as if it was a punishment. A slight gasp fell in my ear. Don't move. It's easy to lose control early in the morning. I really felt things I shouldn't have felt. He leaned stiffly in his arms, not even daring to sit down, just trying his best to maintain his balance. Robert glanced at me and said nothing. 7. After getting off the car, I ran away like the wind. He hurriedly called the system. There's something wrong with your male protagonist. How can he react to his good brother? The system is very calm. Didn't he say he couldn't control himself so early in the morning? He wanted to beat you with a belt before. Do you think he could have any other intentions towards you? Isn't the physiological reaction very normal? The system asked 3 questions in a row and ended coldly. You think too much. Having said that, I decided to stay away from Robert. That uneasy feeling in my heart came up again. Fortunately, he and I were in different classes, and after I ran away under the pretext of finishing my homework, Robert did not chase me. Things that seemed normal in the past now seem more and more wrong the more I think about them. My seat was by the window, and Robert always liked to stand outside and chat with me after class. even following me to the bathroom. As soon as the bell rang, I quickly lay down on the table and pretended to sleep. After a while, I felt a familiar gaze on me. I opened my eyes slightly and saw a shadow falling on the desk. No doubt it's Robert. He stood beside me for a while without moving until the bell rang, and then I felt his passionate gaze shift away. This cycle continued throughout the morning. In the last class, my desk mate came over to me and asked, "Did you have a fight?" While the teacher was writing on the blackboard, I whispered, "No, I'm sleepy. But he just called you, and I saw your fingers move, but you ignored him." Robert seemed to have seen it too. He looked unhappy, as if he was about to eat someone. My hand that was taking notes paused. Robert has been so nice to me these days that I almost forgot that he is actually a guy with a bad temper. I sighed in my heart and asked the system when the heroine would appear. The system beeped several times before saying, "I don't know. I'm only responsible for your plot mission." But my colleague said before that the hero and heroine will meet after the college entrance examination. I counted the days on my fingers, and it's almost time. Keep some distance from Robert for a while. It's just that I can't avoid meeting him during lunch break. Robert was waiting at the door for me to come home for dinner as usual. I turned my words over and over in my mind before I finally said, "Brother, thank you for your time, but I think it's too much trouble for you. I'll go back home and live a little further away, just as exercise." Robert said nothing, his face gloomy. He was silent for so long that I couldn't help but speak again. "It's not your problem. I appreciate your help, but it's not a good idea for me to live in your house. It's hard to live frugally. You've spoiled my appetite. What should I do in the future?" I tried to make my reasons sound as convincing as possible. But obviously I didn't convince Robert, and he took a long time to respond to me. "Why not? You can live in my house forever. I can take you wherever I go. I can give you all my money to spend. I can support you for the rest of your life." My bad premonition seemed to come true. What's the meaning? Robert took a deep breath and squeezed his shaking hands tightly. "I mean, I need you. I can't sleep well without you. In return, I can share what I have with you. You are my best friend. From childhood to adulthood, you are the only one who is sincere to me." The more I listened, the more guilty I felt. I just really wanted his money. "Aren't we good friends? Or do you actually hate me?" His tone sounded gentle, but compared with his expression, it was strangely incongruous. There was no smile on Robert's face. His eyes were dark and deep, but he was suppressing the emotions that he had to hide, looking a little twisted. I took a step back. Robert clenched his fist tightly and supported himself on the door frame with his other hand. "David, come home with me. Can we go back and eat?" Robert's whole hand was shaking uncontrollably, and it was obvious that he was trying hard to control his emotions. I was still thinking, when the system, which had never shown any emotion, suddenly said anxiously, "Go with him. You don't want to know the consequences." But as soon as I spoke, the system seemed to know what I would ask in advance. "No, he won't hurt you." I walked over tentatively. "How are you?" Robert bit his lip and nodded slightly. Still asked me, "Will you come home with me?" I said, "Okay." A warm body embraced me. After a long time, I heard him say, "I thought you didn't want me anymore." A drop of water hit my collarbone, and it felt warm. They are Robert's tears. I trembled slightly, and Robert suddenly said, "Do you think I'm pitiful? Then you come home with me, and I won't be pitiful anymore." The system said, "You see, he is particularly in need of love. He simply can't bear to part with you, his good brother." I patted Robert on the back and repeated, "Don't cry, bro. I really think of you as a friend. As long as you don't bother me, I'll go home with you." Many years later, when I recalled this scene again, I realized that the tear that made me feel overwhelmed was actually just a part of his plan. He became a dog caught in the rain and tried to steal my sympathy. When sympathy turns into heartache, love begins. From that day on, Robert stuck to me even more. But apart from hugging me, he didn't do anything else to show affection. It seemed like it was really just as he said, that he needed me because he couldn't sleep well. I felt much more relieved, especially since the system promised me that the male and female protagonists would meet after the college entrance examination, and when I finished the plot, I could log off the line happily with the 10 million yuan given by the system. Time passed like flowing water, and the countdown numbers for the college entrance examination rolled to 0. After the first exam, Robert, who had outstanding appearance, was caught by reporters for an interview. When asked about his future plans, he chuckled. "I plan to travel the world with my good friend." The boyish middle school syndrome made netizens laugh. I asked him, "Where are you going?" Robert smiled brightly. "You have the final say. Just take me away." I smiled back and said, "If you're willing to come with me." When the heroine shows up, Robert and I will go our separate ways. But Robert now doesn't know it. He looks at me with sparkling eyes, as clear as transparent ice, and his joy is obvious. I can only say sorry to him in my heart. After the college entrance examination, everyone began to study how to fill out their application forms. Robert repeatedly asked me, "Will you apply for University A?" The hero is indeed a favorite of heaven. He can catch up with the 3 years of high school knowledge in just 1 year and even get into University A. Fate is so unfair. I sighed and said seriously, "Yes, my goal is to get into University A." After all, his heroine, my mission target, will appear in a university. As expected, Robert and I were both admitted to University A, but in different majors. Robert chose to accept the adjustment and got into an unpopular major. He is very happy. It's strange. I should be filled with joy, but I feel heavy in my heart. Robert is a really nice guy. If I could, I would love to be his friend. Unfortunately, there is no if. I came here for this mission and am destined to stand opposite him. 9. Throughout the summer, wherever I was, Robert was there. I thought Robert would automatically distance himself from me after entering college. But that didn't happen. Instead, he became even more enthusiastic. Someone posted his photo on the confession wall and he replied, "Playing with me, I only want to be with David. I don't like other living people and I don't like dead people even more." Someone posted my photo on the confession wall and he went crazy. "Host, last time I ordered a happy link from you, you said I would take 1 and send 3, but how come the one I sent was the mistress?" I asked him why he responded like that, and Robert replied confidently, "Isn't the mistress in friendship a mistress?" I am speechless. Before the first class started, my classmates all knew that I had a good friend named Robert. I successfully became the first person they knew in the class. After all, based on my experience in my previous life after 4 years of college, I might not even be able to recognize all of my classmates' faces. Even though we were in different majors, Robert always found ways to spend time with me. While I hope the plot will be over quickly, I can't help but think that if the plot doesn't move forward, it's fine as it is. "David, I have something to do here, you eat first." When I received this message, I was stunned for a long time. Immediately I felt relieved. The plot began, and the hero and heroine met. While eating, I saw Robert on the confession wall. He was wearing the white shirt I picked for him and had a smile on his face. Girls wear white on top and blue on the bottom, which makes them look gentle and fresh. 2 people walked side by side, and the breath of youth was overwhelming. They are indeed the male and female protagonists described in the novel. I finished my meal as usual and returned my plate to the recycling station. As I was about to leave the cafeteria, the system asked me, "Host, are you ready? I'm going to open a mission tracking function for you." I lowered my head and flipped through the photo on the confession wall, silently apologizing. I really didn't mean to be a mistress, nor did I mean to seduce the heroine. "Sure." The system asks again, "You spent 2 hours eating this meal. You usually take 30 to 40 minutes. Host, are you okay?" I was a little annoyed. "Very good. Now let's ask about suicide. I promise I won't let you die." After the system said this incomprehensible sentence, it suddenly made a sharp explosion sound. "Host, I think I got the wrong target for your capture. You need to seduce the male protagonist." After several minutes of waiting, the system still didn't explain. That's exactly what I thought it meant. Nobody, you asked me, a man, to seduce the male protagonist. That's my beloved brother. The system is as quiet as death. It's just work. Everyone makes mistakes. Just go through the process, he won't really sleep with you. According to the plot, I fell in love with the heroine at first sight, but the heroine didn't like me. When the emperor is angry, millions of people will die. I got angry and wore a transparent shirt with a gold chest chain inside to climb into bed, but I was beaten half to death by the male lead. Now the person I want to climb into bed with is Robert. Damn it. 10. David, I don't know the girl in this photo. I don't know why I was photographed. I just chatted with him for a few words. I really had something to do at noon, and it had nothing to do with him. Don't misunderstand me. Robert knew that I would spend my time looking at the confession wall, so as soon as he came back, he hurried to explain to me. I know. No need to explain to me. Robert fell silent, said nothing more, and reached out to hug me. My roommate was not surprised and came over to us with toiletries. The main reason is that Robert gave so much that everyone was willing to give in to him. What's more, Robert is easy to talk to most of the time. It's their fault for taking random photos. I've already asked someone to delete them. It's a good thing you didn't misunderstand me. There was less relief in his tone, and more of an indescribable bitterness. David, what's wrong? I raised my head from his arms in confusion. Robert shook his head, his smile a little forced. Don't leave me. I belong to you. I've gotten used to him occasionally going crazy and saying something I don't understand. I patted his shoulder. Good brother. For life. I added in my mind, if you don't mind me seducing you, but I really don't want your pussy, brother. The situation is compelling. Just like before, Robert continued to eat with me, wash my clothes, and hold me to sleep in his arms in the following days. He asked me out for dinner on Wednesday. According to the plot, it was on this night that I seduced the heroine, now Robert. I arrived at the designated location with trepidation, but only saw Robert and I. What's so important that you have to ask me out? Robert gestured for me to look at the cake on the table, which was specially made to look like half of an island. The edge of the island was written with the words, "Happy Birthday." I just remembered that today is my birthday. When the system transferred me into this world, probably for convenience, it did not change these basic information. But it's crooked. Robert looked uneasy. Well, I studied but didn't learn it. My handwriting is ugly to begin with. Just make do with it. I don't know your exact birth information, so I can only set it to today based on the information I have investigated. Please forgive me for taking the initiative. Melodious piano music sounded in the restaurant at the right time, and Robert handed me a gift box. Inside was a bracelet. I made a bracelet with my 10 favorite places for you. I hope I can go there with you someday. He added, this stone has been baptized for hundreds of years in Sardinia, and there are many traces of water on it. This one came from the Hulunber grassland when I was 10 years old. This one is the most ordinary, but the most precious to me, and it came from my mother's grave. David, I want to give you everything I have. I hope you will be happy and healthy and always be mine. He paused and said with a somewhat unwilling tone, good friend, just be friends with me. I couldn't help but think, what a nice guy Robert is. I bumped fists with him, like a silent promise. The lights outside were bright, but not as bright as Robert's eyes. This would probably be a good night if I didn't have this damn mission. It's late today, let's just rest outside. Robert naturally agreed to my request. That night, I took out the golden chest chain that the system prepared for me from my backpack. It extended from my neck down to the deep of my collar, and it made me want to find out more. However, after changing into that thin, transparent shirt, I remained silent again and again. This is too obscene. It's more shameful than having nothing on. Not wearing a shirt at least makes one feel open and honest. This shirt is like a tool on the body, and the scenery inside is clearly visible. Even the 2 points on the chest are abruptly revealed, which only adds a bit of interest of wanting to refuse but also to welcome. The pants were a pair of sports shorts, but what was outrageous was that there were partially transparent areas on both sides, allowing you to see the top of your thighs and the edge of your underwear. System, you are a complete pervert. You prepared this kind of clothes for me. I stood in front of the mirror in a dilemma. Just now, I sent Robert to buy me a midnight snack while I changed my clothes and prepared to start the plot. But dressed like this, I really can't imagine what Robert would think of me. The system replied, "That's because you don't understand perversion well enough, but I do." And then he ignored me no more. There was no choice but to climb onto the bed, cover my head tightly, and pray in my heart that Robert would kick me down if he saw me, instead of being curious about my face. I waited for a long time in fear, and finally heard the door open. "David!" Robert called for a long time, but didn't wait for my answer. At this time, his cell phone dinged. I thought it must be a timed text message from me, telling him that I would go back first. I heard Robert typing away for a while before he stopped. I was glad my phone was turned off. As if noticing the mess on the bed, Robert walked over to me with heavy steps. I could hear him sounding angry and reached out to pull my quilt. I wrapped it up as tightly as I could. He was having trouble breathing, and his eyes lit up as he saw Robert, who was looking furious. The moment he saw me, his violent expression suddenly turned into incredible ecstasy. "Baby!" Robert's Adam's apple rolled and his voice became hoarse. I was about to explain when he held my hand, leaned over and kissed me. The powerful legs pinned me to the bed. Feeling cold, he lifted the quilt and saw my thin, transparent shirt and the golden breast chain underneath it. Lust surged in his eyes, and almost instantly his body became hot. Robert leaned down a little bit and chuckled in my ear. "I like it very much. Baby, I really like you like this. I want to die in bed with you." I widened my eyes and said I didn't want to. "Robert, calm down and listen to me. Actually, this." He first looked at me with interest, listened for a few seconds, and then took my mouth. He chewed and swallowed my words. "Baby, what are you talking about?" I took a breath and he kissed me again. "Move away and complete the second half of the sentence." "So cute." "I don't want to listen, I want to kiss." While he was kissing me, his tongue skillfully playing around in my mouth, his hands touched my body and started to unbutton my clothes. The chest chain on me was like a catalyst that made Robert even crazier. Couldn't sleep at night. I can feel that Robert is a person who exercises regularly. Want to die. 11. Goddamn system. Damn system. This is totally different from what it says. The system just chuckled. "Host, just tell me if you feel good or not. Did you scream all night long?" I was furious. "Come and try it, you big head ghost." The system is puzzled. "I don't believe it. I was locked in a small dark room for a whole night. I am too embarrassed to see the leader. I want to die, but I still want to fight for my rights. You said he couldn't do it, what should I do now? What about my 10 million? I will never forgive you, you cold-hearted person." The system's tone is even more indifferent. "The mission is accomplished. Do you think I'm that stupid? Your mission is to seduce the male protagonist. He likes you. Do you think I don't know how to play SpongeBob? Why do you think straight men are so nice to you?" I was spread out on the bed like a pancake. "Damn system, damn capitalists. Can't you just tell me directly?" The system was not justified but confident. "I'm telling you straight away. What if you quit?" I thought about it carefully for a while. "If it's Robert, I can give you another 10 million. This time it was the system's turn to be speechless. After about half a minute, it said, "Then you wouldn't agree until you were unhappy. Stop talking. I really want to find a van and kill this system." The system read my mind. "You can't find anyone, and you can't kill me. I will give you 10 million this Wednesday, so keep having fun." "Wait a minute, the lady." The system responded, "There is no female lead. This world had no CP before you came. After you came, there are 2 male leads. Are you talking about the girl in the photo? Didn't Robert tell you about it? We just chatted for a few words." "Why did we chat?" "Because the girl wished you and Robert a long and happy marriage and victory over the secular world." TSK, your Robert smiled as brightly as the sun when he heard it. He really had something to do that day. The birthday present you received was not that easy to get. Robert put a lot of effort into it. He was just preparing for your birthday that day. You think too much. There is no heroine at all. I'm so stupid, really. When I think about it, there are indeed problems everywhere, but I firmly believe what the system says. Then there must be a reason why you chose me, right? The system perked up for once, and one could hear the excitement in its tone. You finally asked me. That's right. We searched countless small worlds before we found you. You know, some people never meet the person they love in their entire lives, and the probability of this happening is very high. Apart from the factors of time and space, two souls that match each other may not necessarily be in the same world. It's normal for you to fall in love with the second dimension for the third time. In other words, you are Robert's destiny. Without you, he would have no emotional connection. He only has it with you. Don't say I'm lying to you. I can sense your mood. You've been enjoying it all along, and now you're just having a good time. That's enough, don't repeat it again. I couldn't find anyone to fix the system, so I could only cover my face in frustration. Just at this moment, Robert walked in. He pulled my hand away distressedly, his eyes gentle. Baby, does it hurt? I bought you some medicine. Can I apply it on you now? I heard the system laughing secretly, so I simply closed my eyes and nodded. It's me who's hurting. There's no need to be hard on myself. Robert applied the medicine to me gently. He hugged me just like every time before. David, I feel like I'm dreaming right now. The first time I saw you, I liked you. You turned around and were just under the street light, he said. My heart is beating so fast. From that moment on, I wanted to be your dog. I remembered him taking the belt last night. I finally understood what he said at that time and his strange behavior all along. I slapped him in dissatisfaction. You are just attracted by beauty. Robert was stunned for a moment, then suddenly lowered his head. Baby, hit me again. Reward me again. Okay? Damn gay, I'm really impressed. Although I also feel pretty good about it.